Hi, I'm Stephanie Rozzo. Welcome to Nature Sketch Create's Sea Otter step-by-step instructional video. In this video, I'll be showing you how to paint the sea otter by using the Nature Sketch Create step-by-step painting instructions. Help out this tiny business by clicking the like button and subscribing to this YouTube channel. First, collect all the materials you need and make sure they're ready to go. Remember, this is just a sketch. Take your time, relax and have fun. And don't worry too much if you think you may have made a mistake. It's just going to make your image perfectly imperfect. Let's get started. Step 1, transfer the image to the watercolor paper. So first, go ahead and tape the top of the transfer image to the back of the watercolor paper. You can actually place the tape anywhere as long as you don't cover up any of the lines you plan on transferring. And go ahead and place the graphite transfer paper dark side down, light side up on top of the watercolor paper and just press down gently. Be careful not to press too much on the outside or anywhere on the paper that you don't want any marks. Sometimes the transfer paper does smudge a little. Draw one line, just trace right over one of those lines to transfer them. And check that line to make sure it's actually transferring dark enough. You're going to want to be able to see the line after it's transferred and after you add the watercolor, so you can redraw it at the end. I usually use about a medium to hard pressure when drawing over the lines. Just transfer them to tracing right over them. And you can put on a podcast, audiobook, some music. Maybe you're sitting outside listening to nature, which is very relaxing. This is meant to be a relaxing activity, so whatever is relaxing for you, go ahead and do that. And take your time. Don't worry too much about being exact. If you don't draw the lines exactly as they are in the transfer image, that's fine. If you don't transfer all the lines, that's okay too. Just go ahead and go through, trace over the lines to transfer them. Once you think you have all the lines transferred, go ahead and lift up the image and the transfer paper and gently press down on one corner to keep it in, make sure it stays in place, and flip it up and down to see that you've actually transferred all the lines. And look at it like a flip book from one side of the image to the other with your eyes, so you can figure out what you might be missing. Now you can add those in, and if you still end up missing something after this, it's not a big deal. You can always add it in later. It also might be helpful to use a colored pencil or a fine-tipped colored pen instead of a regular pencil, just to help you keep track of what lines you've transferred. Go ahead and transfer the common name and scientific name if you like. To transfer the common name, since my pencil tip is smaller than the text, I like to draw right on the inside, creating an outline. So I go on the inside of the black. When you have all the lines transferred, go ahead and remove the graphite transfer paper. Set it to the side. You can reuse it over and over and over. So use it again later or give it to a friend to use. And remove the transfer image from the watercolor paper and remove the tape from the transfer image. Save the transfer image just in case you want to protect your painting from any unwanted smudges from your hand. And then if your tape came off clean like mine did without too much paper on it, go ahead and save it for future use. If not, go ahead and compost that. And now I'm going to use the kneaded eraser to erase any unwanted marks. I like the way most of this looks. I don't see a lot of unwanted marks. If I wanted to lighten them, I'd use a light gray spot and just kind of press over it. I'll lighten it up by picking up some of the graphite marks. And now I'm ready to move on to step 2. Step 2, paint in Sea Otter beige and blue. So first mix the Sea Otter beige by taking 8 drops of the 12H titanium white. Shake that up to make sure it's well mixed. Sometimes the paint pigments do settle on the bottom. So before you use any of the paint, make sure you shake it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 3 drops of 2H gamboge. And 1 drop of the 24H burnt umber. Go ahead and mix those up. Test the color out so you can match it to your sheet. Looks pretty good. I'm gonna clean off the brush a little bit and then take some to the side and add more water to it. I'm adding more water by pressing on the barrel of my water brush. You can add more water with a traditional brush by adding a little bit from whatever vessel you're holding the water in. Dab it off onto my towel and test it out. Looks a bit dark still, so I'm going to take it again to the side and add even more water to it. Maybe even more. This looks too dark. I can even dab it off on my towel. I'll test it out. I can even go even lighter. So I'm adding more. Check that out. That looks a lot better. And I'm just going to add that over the entire otter. Avoiding the eye maybe. If not, no big deal. The water brush has enough water that this paint is flowing from one side to the other. And you just want to fill it in like you do with a crayon or a marker. Just taking the brush from one side to the other, filling in the space. Clean off your brush and then mix the Sea Otter blue. So you'll want 2 drops of 12H titanium white. 1, 2. And 2 drops of the 34H turquoise blue. 1, 2. And mix that up. And then take it to the side and add a little bit more. And add some water. Clean off the brush and then create another spot with more water. Clean off the brush and create a spot with even more water added. I'm going to test out each of these. So we have the lighter one, looks pretty good. And then the slightly darker, looks good. A little bit darker, and then the darkest. That looks about right. I'm not going to be using that super dark color. And I can adjust when I need to adjust when the time comes. I'm going to go ahead, clean off my brush there, pick up this lightest color and dab it on my towel and then add it to the water area like you see in image for step 2. And it doesn't have to be exactly the same, just add it to the same general area. If you get outside the lines or somewhere you didn't want paint, that's fine. This is just a sketch. It's gonna look great, and all the mistakes just make it imperfectly perfect and unique to you. That's the great thing about watercolor in general. It can be hard to control and creates lots of fun, unexpected elements to your painting. Once you've added that layer of color, go ahead and clean off your brush. Let this dry and move on to step 3. Step 3, paint in otter brown and blue. Go ahead and mix otter brown, and that's just 2 drops of the burnt umber. 1, 2. Add a little bit of water to that so that it matches that H color. So you want it pretty dry, but not too dark. Maybe just a little bit more. When we're talking about drying wet, we're talking about how much water is added to it in the palette, making it lighter or darker. Go ahead and pick up a little bit and test it out on your paper again after dabbing on your towel. That looks better. And then dab off the brush on the towel to get rid of some of that paint. Take it to the side, adding a little bit more water. Test that out. See, that still looks very dark. So I'm going to dab it off on my towel again and then add more water. Should be a little closer to that color. Has less paint pigment added to it. So it has more water added to it, and also less paint pigment on my brush. Dab it on my towel. Check it out. Looks pretty good. Might want something in between the two, maybe a little bit more color for that lighter color. Oh, that looks a lot better. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take this drier, darker color, adding just a little bit more water since it's settled. Testing it out again. Looks pretty good. And maybe a little bit more. Dabbing off on my towel, testing it out. Rolling my brush on my towel, just the tip there, to create a fine tip for me to apply, and making sure this is all dry before applying any of the paint. And then I'm just going to add it in a line motion to the otter like I see in step 3's image. And I can add it to the eye, but I think I'll hold off until later and add it to the nose. This little part on the mouth. And this little ear area. And then don't worry about being too exact, just kind of add it in the same general spots as you see in the image, using a line motion when needed in the direction of those transfer lines. So let those transfer lines guide you. Again, don't worry too much about being exact, just same basic areas. I'm just coloring it in like you would with a marker or crayon. Here I'm just coloring it in rather than having the line motion in this area. And I'll do more lines in just a minute, or you could do the lines first and then color in this area, whatever is easiest for you. Again, don't worry too much about staying in the lines. It's going to be perfectly perfect. Once you've added all of that, go ahead and clean off your brush and pick up some of that color that's not the wettest, but kind of has a little bit more paint pigment and less water to it for the blue, and add it using kind of a wavy motion with your brush, and you want to use kind of broad strokes. And again, don't worry about being exact, just the same general spaces, preserving some of that other color and adding the marks in the direction of the transfer lines for the water transfer lines. And like if you're using a marker, you want to use kind of just one stroke for each line. Get a little darker around the back part of the head here. And then add some more broad strokes. Kind of get wavy in there. I'm using the side of my brush to add those strokes. Clean off your brush, let this dry, and move on to step 4. Step 4, paint in the otter brown and blue. So I'm going to go ahead and add the lighter of the brown colors. Make sure that that's still a good color to use by testing it out on my paper. Looks pretty great to me. And then I'm just going to make sure I have a fine tip. If you need to, you can roll your tip on your towel before applying it, and then just kind of add it in a line motion like I see in my image in step 4 in the direction of those transfer lines. So use those as a guide. In the direction of those whiskers too. And just want to make sure you can see some of that color underneath when you're done. So you kind of add it sparingly, and you can do that over the whole otter here. Some areas where the blue got in there a little bit, so I added a little bit more of the brown over it. Then add the Sea Otter blue. You'll want a color that's on the darker side, but not super dark. This might be a little too dark here, so I'm going to add a little bit of it to our previous color, just to give myself some space here, with some more water to it, but not as much as before. I'm going to test it out, see if it looks right. It looks pretty good. I like how it looks. I'm going to go ahead and add that in using those same strokes, just kind of preserving some of that color underneath again. Didn't think that was close enough to the otter's body, so I'm adding a little bit more. And just adding it sparingly. And clean off my brush, and then I'm going to let this dry and move on to step 5. Step 5, paint in the otter deep brown and blue. So first I'll want to mix the otter deep brown, and I'll want 2 drops of the gamboge. 1, 2. 2 drops of 24H burnt umber. 1, 2. And 1 drop of the carbon black. Gonna mix that up, adding a little bit of water. I'll test it out. Looks pretty good. And I'm going to add that with a rolled tip to the otter, so the tip is pretty fine. I'm going to add it like you see in step 5, and kind of sparingly. And again, you want to see the previous color underneath, so don't add too much. And you don't have to be exact. It doesn't have to be the same as your reference image. Just in the same general spaces. Once you have the brown added, go ahead and clean off your brush. And add a little bit more of that blue color to the water just to deepen it up just a little bit more. Use those broad strokes, again preserving color underneath. Just adding a little more depth. Clean off your brush, let this dry, and move on to step 6. Step 6, paint in otter gold and blue. So mix the otter gold by simply using a little bit of the gamboge. Shake that up, add 2 drops to your palette, adding a couple drops just to give you some more to work with. You could work with just 1, or you could work with even more if you want. Add a little bit of water to that, but not a lot. Dab it off onto your towel. Pick it up again, dab it on your towel. And then you can test this out to make sure it's gonna move well for you on paper. If it's not moving, you can add a little bit more water. If it's moving too much, maybe use a little less water. And then add it to the otter sparingly, like you see in step 6's image, and then find a reference image just to add a little bit of highlight throughout the otter. Just a few spaces here. And clean off your brush and pick up some blue, a little bit of the dark blue, and add it to this blue here. Test it out on your paper, it looks pretty good. And actually I want a little bit more water to it. So add some water to that. Test it out one more time. Looks better. And then I'm gonna just add that to deepen some of the blue areas just a little bit. Just one more time. And each time I paint this is gonna be just a little bit different. I think you'll find the same. Just depending on my mood or how my paint's behaving that day. Maybe my paintbrush is acting a little different. Maybe my hands didn't behave, and you can smudge little pieces of paint off if you want to with your finger. If you really want to move that off of a space you didn't want it in, or you could just leave it. And when you're done, go ahead and clean off your brush, let this dry, and move on to step 7. Step 7, add ink lines. So use the smallest micron, the black 005 micron, to redraw the lines from your transfer image. So hopefully you can still see those. And you can also refer to your final reference image for that placement. And so just go throughout and add those lines. You can also redefine some of the lines based on where your paint ended up. So if some of the paint fell a little bit outside or inside of those lines, you can draw the line a little bit more outside or a little bit more inside, whatever works best for you. Next, you can use the 01 black micron to thicken some of the lines in the paw, to draw in some more hairlines, and to fill in the eye if you haven't already, or to define that a little bit more if you need to. Last, I'm going to use the 08 black micron to thicken up some of the lines throughout the image. And I'm going to add a double line underneath the bottom of the otter. Thicken some of these water lines and thicken some of the lines in the head, some of the lines in the whiskers, mouth, ear, paws, belly, leg, and tail. So go ahead and go throughout and thicken some of those lines. And again, you can refer to your final reference image to help you figure out where to place those lines and the image in 7B. Be careful not to smudge the 08 micron lines. They do tend to smudge while they're still wet, so just shortly after you add them. I think I'm just going to thicken up the scientific name with the 01 micron. And I think I'm done. And as you can see, even with color formulas and with step-by-step instructions, the image can vary a bit based on mood or how your equipment is performing. So each image will be unique to you. Great job observing your world and keep practicing. You have a few options what to do with this now that you're done. You can punch holes in it and add it to your sketchbook. You can gift it by simply sending in the mail. You can frame it for display in your house. And also make sure to share it to our Facebook fan art page and use the hashtag NatureCrateArt to have it featured on our social media. Make sure to check out naturesketchcrate.com to shop for future lesson crates and to sign up for our newsletter for regular updates.